Okay, this is gonna work, so I'm gonna go ahead and begin this video. I just made a test to see if it's loud enough. Like I just said on that last recording, it's 3:14 in the morning. God gave me a message. I have 3 videos, all about the same issue, about to Jeff Bezos, and I had one called God's Coin 1, God's 22, and I'm gonna put a third one on there because it's pretty good. These 3 videos, take it for information, okay? For the world and for Jeff Bezos, for Donald Trump, for Bill Gates, and for Satoshi Nakamoto. Take it for information. God's told me to back off right now. If not for me to back off, let Jeff Bezos, let Donald Trump, let Satoshi, and Bill Gates decide when God's Coin starts, okay? After all, it's their billions of dollars, and I don't want them to invest more than $1 billion each in Burundi, because it won't take that much. And then I found that Sierra Leone is not as poor as it was. So I want to, the next country in line will be Mozambique. After Mozambique, then it will be the South Sudan and the Congo at the same time. The Congo has to be next, and the South Sudan as well. As soon as we've done the Congo and South Sudan, then we'll head to Central Africa and up the line. We'll keep looking for the next country in line. Every one of these countries will have their rate. There'll be a different rate of an exchange. Like I said, for the Burundians, the Burundi franc will be equal to a God's coin. I'm not sure about Sierra Leone yet being worth what they're going to be worth. It's not going to be worth 2 God's coins because they are not the poorest country. I was kind of misled there. Their currency is labeled as 90,000. The Leone is labeled as 99,000 to $1. However, that's kind of misleading because it's just because their currency is so high, it makes it seem like they're poor, but they're not poor. It's just because their currency is so high, marked so high. So we'll have to look into that, and we'll definitely look into that, what it is, because every country will be according to how they are. The Congo is very close to being exactly like Burundi, and so they probably will be equal. The Congolese franc will probably be as equal as Burundian franc, meaning that's another place to get for everybody to invest. And there's 106 million. That could be 120 million people, not billion. But there was 12 million in Burundi. It actually, I gave it to 20 up that to 20 million. Okay, and if there's 106 million in the Congo, I'll be calling that 200 million. Probably, because, that 106 million was taken in the 1921 census. So it doesn't hurt anybody for me to up it, because future generations are going to be born. That money will still be there for the Burundians, whatever I don't have to use. The same as because they'll always be given. We're talking about $1 billion per country. By each one of you, will you have a way that you can get it where you're not spending your money on your losing dollar. The losing dollar, it can go higher than 50,000 times, a God's coin. Less than it cost $50,000 a God's coin. It could go higher, being that America has the strongest GPD or gross national product in the whole world. So anyway, you guys should understand the business. You guys are the ones that'll start it. When you decide to start investing your billions, brother, those billions will be multiplied like the Warren Grundy. You will be immediately quintrillionaires, when you invest in Burundi and francs. That's right, because right now the current rate's 31, 3,100. As the banks are going to be everyone 3,100 Burundian francs for $1. They were giving 2 days ago $3,500 to the Burundian franc. It's dropping. The amount that is dropping, so that means that you're getting poor. That's what this thing's all about, to stop this. Now each Burundi is going to be a millionaire, almost a millionaire. It's not going to be a millionaire, but they will be millionaires, because they're going to be in hundreds. You're talking about each individual is going to be getting like $260,000. But how often? And by who? But I'm going to try to put a limit to that, because it's going to be like, okay, when a country is so full, it will stop allowing people to buy. They won't. The Burundian francs won't be on the market anymore. You got the people kind of catch up. The same with the Congolese franc, and for the Central African franc, the Sudanese pound will be the same way. And like I said, I will adjust. I'll be adjusting and telling everybody the rate before it happens. These are places where the world, not just you guys, you four, but the world's going to catch on and see what you guys are doing as an example. Basically, you just got to know by this video that God is saying you guys are in control. You'll decide when it starts. And when it does start, the world's going to be ready, okay? You're the ones that are going to make God's coin work. God's coin's going to work because you guys are going to set the example. You got to make this a success of God's coin. It's going to be the only currency in the world, okay? Even though how do you say, everybody's still going to use the same currency. But it's going to be the only control of all the money in the world is by God's coin. I could simply just put bank. God could simply just not give you any free warning, and put all the put it just all on every market. And the African market has 29 security exchanges, markets, just like the New York Stock Exchange. Okay, they're securities. I always thought it was stock market, but I find out it's called Securities Exchange. Okay, so the New York Securities Exchange is not the New York Stock Market Exchange. But what I'm saying is, there are 29 of these in Africa, and Africa will be the first continent, and then it will go fast. It'll go, within a week, 2 weeks. all of Africa will have opened accounts because you're giving away free money and they know it's really coming. I mean, when everybody knows is that all they got to do is get to the bank and there's 200,000 Burundian francs there for them for free. My God, or the Congolese francs. All that money's for free. Every person in that country is going to be flocking to the banks. And by God, by then, Jeff Bezos, Bill Gates, Satoshi Nakamoto, and Donald Trump, you better have the banks ready to go to these countries and stay in these countries, not just because the people have to go to these banks. Well, there's not going to be any more transmission thing. As far as blockchain, as for all these things, they're going down. I already mentioned that in the other videos. The Illuminati, the Rothschilds, the Freemasons, whatever plans you had for the future, and using blockchain to encrypt whatever you're up to, in impossible algorithms, by making it seem like placing everything by the wire and getting it to everybody that much faster. The fastest way for people to get anything transferred, and the safest way, is somebody go there personally and do the banking for the family and the banks better be ready to be really clearly close, to these homes. Of course, everybody will have the money to be moving around, so they'll also move close to wherever they're going to be getting their money. So as this world shifts from being in the big cities and things that, and able to clean up the big cities and start them over, no more houses near the cities and things like that. The cities will have a chance, and I'll actually pass out the book that actually says there'll still be a tax rates where the wealthiest people in the world will be the people with God's coin, and they will end up paying a pretty high tax, like 30%. Then you're going to have the people with the high income, not the wealthiest people, at 20. And you're going to have a 10% tax on everybody that's earns God's coins. Why not? You're already going to is not to pay a 10% tax. The 10% tax will go towards helping run the military. That's what the military is all about. Everybody in the military will get the 10%. That's what God's military is all about. 10% to pay the military for everybody to be learning and being on a job that they're choosing in the private sector, and arming each household. I think God's covered everything. If there hasn't, people, if you guys got a better idea than God, then let me know that too. But I have a job to do. That's what I'm making this video for. I got a job to do. I'm going to be Santa Claus. I got to get my hair dyed white and my beard dyed white, pure white snow, right at Christmas time, so I can show up. You're going to see this in my next couple videos at Centre Akamori in Bujumbura. I got to be Santa Claus. And because they're a French-speaking country, and under Belgium, they know Santa as Père Noël. Noel is Christmas. That's what their name for Christmas is. Noel. And Père means like father. The father of Christmas. Well, I guess I'm going to be the real physical father of Christmas for Burundi for the rest of my life. It's run by Catholic nuns. It's similar to St. Jude's Hospital. But God just, and I love these children so much. I can't hardly stand being away, and I've only been away one day. One day. And actually two. And I actually, I miss them so much, and I know they got to be missing me. I think it's land. Now, things were tough in Bujumbura. When you go without electricity for 8 days, and when you're there when there is no petrol, and now the petrol's starting to, slowly come in. Norwegian oil tankers have finally got to the refineries or the petrol. I don't know if they even shipped in crude. I think they shipped in actual petrol. But what they have ever got their money into, whatever they were able to do, it's just filtering in right now. And I'm sure that the prices are going sky high because that's what they usually follows any shortage. And the shortage was the reason why electricity, the same fuel shortage is what caused the electricity to happen for 8 days. I mean, their electricity runs off of fuel, diesel fuel and things like that, okay? They call diesel fuel kerosene there. They don't call it diesel fuel. And it's possible it is kerosene. That's what, I understand that they can run on both. And so maybe there they don't use diesel, they use kerosene because kerosene's a cleaner fuel. Like I said, it is a very, very clean country because whatever Belgium's doing, you didn't see litter there. You didn't start seeing litter when this chaos started in Burundi, when the people couldn't drive their cars, when you slowed them down and didn't have time to pick up the trash because the huge lines. Could you imagine how many lines of cars are not being used or parked on the sides of the streets in lines at fuel stations and people carrying their own water? This is what's going on. People are carrying instead of carrying gas jugs to fill up cars, they're carrying up water jugs to get water to their homes. And if they do get that water, that's not what they call drinkable water. It's got to be cooked. It's got to be boiled. Okay, that's the water that you use for washing their clothes and cleaning their houses and cooking if they absolutely necessary. But it's got to be, pasteurized. These people are tough because they're always smiling. They're always happy and they're not arguing, fighting, or anything else. So whatever Belgium's doing is perfectly all right. I've never seen such a place where there wasn't police car sirens going off, ambulance sirens going off, a place where there was no even fire trucks or anything going off. I mean, it was like no chaos nowhere until these lines started. And even at that now, every Burundian, even Marcel and his family, are carrying their own water. When I go back in December, I'm definitely going to get him a pump, a $30 pump would actually put is enough. A $30 pump is just enough to take a real good shower. I'll plug it in when they need it and get it to their upper floor. Imagine they have to carry their water to the second floor because and the girls, you'll see them in the video. Nikki or Belise were carrying that water. They don't work there no more because they quit because of their family conditions. They were needed at home. Well, not the case with Nikki. I mean, Kiki, rather. Kiki would, you know, she was first to leave for her reasons. We don't really know. We suggested that she found a boyfriend, and the boyfriend talked her into leaving. But it hurt Belize so much because the girls were so tight, singing together and always together. I can remember them when they were washing clothes. They were throwing the wet clothes at each other and singing, and they just having a great time together. And so when Belize left, right when Kiki left, all these things are understandable. Now Marcel and them carry Marcy as opposed to having a live-in nanny to a babysitter after she gets out of school. That the babysitter picks her up at school and keeps her until Marcel gets off. It's actually a better situation for Marcy because Marcy is around other children. Not that Kiki and Belize didn't play with her because there was a lot of fun watching both of them play. You know, she had a great little time, so she's a blessed child. I have gotten so close to these people that's my job. I'll be Santa Claus for the rest of my life to 170 kids with autism, had cystic, some of them were this way because of cerebral palsy. Some of them there because of anything, all kinds of reasons, Down syndrome. I can't photograph the children for the good reason. That's exploitation. That's not right. I wouldn't allow that. But these kids are adorable, and I love them, and I have the same. I told you over and over, I am autistic as well, and I was treated pretty much the same as they were. I never mainstreamed in school, and was sent to. In California, I was not sent to such severe schools, but there was kids in my classes with Down syndrome. There was kids in my classes with the same physical and mental challenges. And so some of the things they called us and stuff like that, I've taken all my life. Even up to 18 when I graduated, thing I was still called some of the, but not too many people wanted to fight me. Because something about it all my life I've been fighting. And my dad said never fight a small one. Never pick on anybody smaller than myself. But go after the biggest guy. And if win or lose, I gain his respect. And the rest will leave you alone. Well, I've been doing that ever since I was thinking. And my brother, he's older than me, 2 years older than me. Believe me, he doesn't want to fight me. I don't stop. I like an elephant. I mean, it's like if 2 years later, I haven't finished the fight. I followed him to Vietnam. Tried to follow him to Vietnam. Exactly. I was 17. He had to go to corpsman school for 2 years. I'm 2 years old, so I tried to join at 17, and I tried to meet him there in Vietnam to finish the fight. Because on his leave, just before he went to Vietnam, he called me a effing hippie. I was going to get married and stuff, but he called me a drug-using effing hippie, okay? I wasn't using drugs. I was engaged. But I tore into him like it was, the Flash. We never finished that fight. So I was going to go to Vietnam, but I couldn't go to Vietnam. Why? Because me and my brother are the only two people with the same last name. So I went to 2 med cruises and all over with the Navy for a couple of years. I could have been out of the Navy 3 times. I caught spinal meningitis in boot camp. I lost from 150 pounds to 87 pounds. 87 pounds. They said they didn't think I could hold a rifle, so they didn't let me. I begged them. I said, I don't want to discharge. I don't want to discharge. Please let me stay in. So I stayed in, and I could have got out. When they sent me the first ship, first thing I did was get in a fight. Some drunken sailor was getting out the next day. He tossed me around like a rag. I took Kempo. In high school, I was only a purple belt, headed for blue. But Kempo's not a martial art. It's just willing to break bones, and it's just a willingness to break bones or dislocate and stop a fight. There is no fight with Kempo. So every time I hit him, even though it turned out to be I traded punches and they tied our hands behind our backs, or they held our hands behind the backs while each one let each other hit. We crossed it 8 times, but every time I hit him, I drew blood. He didn't draw. I didn't have, nothing left in me. I didn't have, all I do was swell up, and I looked better. I looked better. After I beat this guy up, he made me the leader of his little gang of 30 dozen. It's 11 other guys. I'm supposed to take his place. These guys didn't do that, but they kind of just made me the mascot and gave me a name called Razor Ass, because I cut him up so bad with my hands. Of course, they're small and sharp. I bloodied his eyes, bloodied his nose, bloodied his mouth, and he had blood, so much blood on his shirt. He was turned from white to red. They had to finally take me up the stairs to have a corpsman, because I flinched and turned my head sideways, and he hit the side of my ear, and I was blood coming out my ear. They said, "Oh, wait." They rushed me to the corpsman to see if I didn't, what was going on, because I had blood pouring out my ear. When the corpsman checked, I think I had to have a little stitch put there, and they put a bandage and a big bolt thing that I took off. By the time I got downstairs, I took it off. Well, I didn't actually take it off then, but little Chief Markey was down below, and this guy come and hugged me with this bloody shirt and still knows. He says, "Here he is, Chief. This is the little guy that kicked my butt." He didn't use the word butt, but then he actually said, "This is a little razor ass that cut my ass." and after that, it was history. Well, I was a mascot for the next 2.5 years, or at least the next 2 years. I was a extra 2.5 years. I was a mascot. That I was the one that started the fight for them when we usually fought Marines. So if I'm the one that would either be invited to show them who are you talking to, and they send me, the littlest guy, over to turn the table over on a bunch of Marines or start the fight. So I drank as much alcohol as I could, because in the fight, I knew I was going to get pounded. And I was knocked out many times. But when I got up, I didn't feel no pain. I've led a very, very wild and interesting life. I should be dead. But I think that's look what God's been doing with me. I have unusual stories to tell you since I was 3 years old. And I'll be telling those stories to the world, because now the world knows who I am and what I'm doing. You do too, and I could use some money. Please, see if you want. I'm going to try to play Santa Claus, but I would love to give these 170 kids new shoes and little girls' dresses or gifts. I would love to. It's run off of donations and the Catholic Church. There's 5 nuns there. And I would love the world to help me get to Burundi. It's not cheap. It's spending a lot of time in the plane. But I'm going to tell you, United Airlines was fantastic. So was Brussels Airlines. And it wasn't, it's like, oh, I can't say the other airline, but you guys know there's airlines that you have to, they won't even, the seats don't even tilt back. How would you ride a plane for 16 hours without being able to tilt your seat back? You can't. Thank God for United. And Delta was wonderful too. Actually, Delta was the top flight, but there's none going that way. And because they're from Burundi's from run by Belgium, Brussels is the biggest stop. That's why they came there. In fact, Brussels is the only Bujumbura is the only airport that Belgium actually paved the runway. Any other stop. It used to be the capital of Bujumbura used to be the capital of Burundi. But because of politics, they moved it to the smaller, they moved the capital, and every other place has dirt runways. So that tells you right there, they got some policies in Burundi but it's not necessarily a bad thing, because when certainly people are going to be leaving Burundi when they get a lot of money. But that's going to put it back to who's going to really be there, the tribes. When the tribes are there, they live with nature. Of course, they could still hunt just like that, like the Eskimo. They're the only ones that are still allowed to take seals and whales and things. People can't just go in and kill a seal and a whale. There's a few more things that the Eskimo only will do. Just like in the United States, it used to the only one that could hunt a buffalo at that one time was the Indian. Now so many are being killed for commercial use, but they're highly limited. But the tribes respect nature, and so they should be allowed to hunt like that. But in God's world, hunting's not going to exist anymore. Not just for trophies, not even for meat. You have enough money to buy meat, any kind of meat except for hunted meat. Let these things alone. Why? Because you're learning, you got to learn from all this, the whole experience. We're living beings, okay? But so are they. If they got DNA, they got babies, and God counts on all of them. There's 3 kingdoms within yourself. You got the living, and you got the dead running your DNA, and they're still living. Doing thy will on earth as it is in heaven, your DNA. And then you also have the unborn or living. God knows each one of them. And the unborn to God, they're growing up. They can see them still growing up. But then when they're born, it's like, finally, he's been in here a long time. But I think that the unborns are actually growing up to an age and learning from each other and playing, because God spent so much time playing. Who's he playing with? I think most of the time he spends playing. And I happen to know this because ever since God started talking to me, he hasn't quit. He doesn't quit. I know to almost everything. I've been learning it only since he started talking. Well, I know God's been hinting to me all my life some of these stories. So because when I read the Bible, there was making no sense at all. I mean, you could read Genesis. The first he created the sun, the moon, the sun and moon on the first day, and then he did it. Had to do it again on the third day. Does that make sense? Then there's another thing that you guys need to be caught up with. The newest version of the Catholic Bible, under Genesis, it's written that that man has domination over all beasts, anything in this world, for his own pleasure, to kill, to torture, to make a show of, do whatever they want. It's for our own pleasure that God built us to give us dominion over all things. And if we want to eat them, if we want to torture them, we want to make them the beast of burdens, or whatever. That's what God put them on this earth for. That is totally wrong. And if you go from the first version of Genesis, in the first Bible written, it was not ever like that. But since then, they gotten so out of hand that they're almost saying that they are God. Man is God, and man's been trying to be God since the first Bible. First Bible didn't come around until 338 A.D. under Constantine. Come on, people. We got to do a little bit of thinking and listening. You don't almost have to read anything anymore, because reading it has been so changed around. You might as well just listen to what God's telling you right now. I'll teach you a lot of things that you guys need to really know. I don't believe in churches. Every church needs to know the truth of who Paul was. Paul wrote up to 20 books in the Bible. 20 books. 4 Luke. 4 Mark. And the second book of John. The second book of John, not the first, because John was alive. He lived the longest, and he's 8 years old, 99. But he was exiled to the Isle of Patmos, where he was held prisoner. He had to spend his days alone. He did not write Revelations. He didn't write 2nd John. Now, there's another book of John that starts out in the Bible, and they're talking about John the Baptist. But John, in 1 John, happens to be the father of Peter. He's also the father of Andrew. His brother's name was James. James and John were brothers. They were the sons of Zebedee. And I forget her name, but I shouldn't even be able to forget her name, but the father of Zebedee, okay? Then there was Peter and Andrew were the sons of John. There was the only one who was left after Christ was crucified was John and his father, because Andrew was, I think he was crucified. I'm not sure about that, but I'm pretty sure that Andrew was crucified. Paul wasn't born. He was born 5 years after Christ was crucified. Mark was born 17 years after after none of them were with Jesus Christ at all. Yet they write in red writing like they were with him. They never walked with Jesus. They weren't apostles. They were self-appointed apostles. But there's self-appointed apostles by an antichrist. That was Paul. How do I know that? God didn't even have to tell me that. I knew that from. I've been fighting that for since I got the gift of tongues when I was 55 years old. I knew it when I was 55 years old. The first thing I knew the statement that Paul made. He said he said in this statement, "Though I speak in tongues, I would rather speak 5 words of understanding than 10,000 words in tongues, like a barbarian." When John and Peter found his writings, nobody got to read Paul's writings. They didn't never know when he went to churches or anywhere, nobody read his writings. And when they finally read his writings on the year 64 A.D., they were waiting for him. John was waiting for him, and so was Peter, his son. They were waiting for him with the book open. When Paul come through the door, he had a shock. He said, "Whoa, wait a minute." And he said, he knew. He didn't say no. He just said, guards, because the guards were always close by. He was sent to infiltrate the Catholic Peter's church to find out what they're talking about, this new language in tongues, a way to communicate behind the back, kind of like the secret societies of the Freemasons, huh? He thought, so Nero, the 16-year-old new emperor, sent with the Senate that had stabbed his father. It wasn't his father. He was a great nephew, a distant. But he's the first one in nobility. When he finally got it up there to keep, Triburnus was the emperor after the Senate stabbed Julius Caesar. Triburnus was there for all that time until they finally found that Nero reached 16, and he was a distant nephew with royal blood. So when he got 16, they put him on the throne, and they pretty much kind of ordered him, okay, this is what we want you to do. So he took Paul, that was a tax collector for the Jews, and they gave him a new job. Go infiltrate the church. You're a good writer. You're a good, all the books. You can fit right in. You know everything. He did. Like I said, he wrote down. He read the epistles of Luke. He read the epistles of Matthew. He copied Matthew's thing and kind of paralleled them with his own writing. Matthew was called Levi, and was asked. Jesus actually asked him to join them as an apostle. Matthew was an apostle of Christ, and he walked with Christ. So the words of Matthew were paralleled by Paul. Yet Paul was able to write in red writing. So was Luke. So was all of Mark's writings. So what I'm trying to say is, we didn't pay attention to him, and he was infiltrated. So immediately he hollered for the guards. Peter grabbed him by the throat, almost crushed his neck, is the way God told me. And he was crucified. They said he wanted to be crucified upside down. Was not true. He was crucified upside down. Caesar didn't even want him crucified upside down. Nero did not want to see him crucified upside down, but the Senate insisted. Crucify him upside down. And you see, the crucifixion then wasn't on a cross. It was on a X-brace that was put on the ground where the people were actually sitting down, kind of like the situation, and they starved to death. or went without water. So with the thing about, and most of them were subject to ridicule, but not Peter. They didn't want anybody talking to Peter. They had him crucified upside down, so he would die that much faster. And he didn't want nobody to talk with him because he would have told them that Paul was the Antichrist. He was the Antichrist. And he had formed all those churches. Who else in Revelations would have wrote, I am somewhat against all these churches. And then he wrote against all these churches. What was he against? None of the churches would quit speaking in tongues. He always wanted an interpreter. He always wanted somebody to be, you're not good enough to talk to God. You need to go through us, third party. You got to have an interpreter. Then he called people to prophesy. Was better, just prophesy something from God. The language with God, I didn't understand this until God told me a year ago. Was never my language, a gift of my language. God, when I told you that we became the hands and feet and mouth of God, when we became, when I became, that's what God asked me to do. He wanted me to become the hands and feet and mouth of God. When I did become him, and God started, that's what I'm telling you. God was God's voice and his language coming through me. So when you guys heard somebody speaking in tongues, that wasn't God. Them, just blah, 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 that was God. Now, I'm not saying that you haven't heard people sounding like chickens clucking and doing all kinds of things, right? Those are the kind of people that impersonate people that really have the gift of tongues. I know that everybody's been in a church when somebody spoke in tongues, and that's been the real thing, and you can feel God. They humbled themselves. It gets as quiet as a pin. How is that? The difference. And then sometimes somebody will get up to interpret that. The one that will interpret that will be the one that said it, because that was God. Okay? Unless you was given the gift of interpretation. Every time somebody receives a gift, it comes with a job, a calling. And if you hear a person that's a prayer warrior, they call them, and they're praying in God, that's not them. That's been God praying, instructing the people, healing, trying to heal. That's how we know that Paul was Antichrist, and everybody that speaks in tongues is a pure traitor to God for not acknowledging God, but rather listening to let them perpetrate the teachings of Paul, where God, he said, I'd rather speak 5 words of my own language of understanding than 10,000 words from God. Now that was what we knew. Everybody that's ever got the gift of tongues knew. Right then, Paul was a fraud. Yet we've been sitting there because the church has been so powerful, and we learned that every word in the Bible is so true, so true. And we've been looking for now the rapture and the apocalypse. Does this sound like this is the apocalypse when God's going to... Definitely all of them. Right? Read Matthew and read Mark at the end chapters, like chapter 28. Read it when it says, only God knows the time and the day and the hour when God will return. And then read the end of the Bible, and even in Revelations, but every part of that came true too. But it said that God will make everybody will hear know the gospel. Has everybody before the rapture ever takes place or the end of time comes, everybody has to hear about Jesus Christ. Now tell me, Christians, how far have you traveled to get the word out? How far have you gone? Where have you gone, churches? Have you been following those steps? Do you know that there are people that haven't heard the word in Africa, in Europe, in Asia? Come on, people. You never left to find out. You let somebody else, you trust that somebody else has gotten there to all four corners of earth. But the Bible says for sure that Jesus said that everyone will have heard the gospel. And which gospel? There's two gospels. There's one gospel written by Jesus, and there's one gospel that's written by Paul. The one by Paul is much longer and better reading, because the one from that Peter and John wrote and Matthew wrote about, there's no books. Philip, Bartholomew, the real apostles. When they found the Dead Sea Scrolls, they found Judas's writings when they were together, when they grew up. They don't let that revealed. That some of the things that they knew. Jesus was performing miracles as a young boy. So they found it out in the Dead Sea Scrolls. Why? Because he was God on earth. He was here and we crucified him. So anyway, I'm getting too far off this track. I made this video to the world has to understand that Billy Graham didn't go to heaven to sing his songs the rest of his life. Instead, he's probably mourning, and wish he had never spoke about hell. Hell's a relative term. I've lived in hell, and I've been through hell, and anybody in this world that's been through hell, it's one time or another in their life. I've never been through the kind of hell that those poor people in Palestine went through. I've never been on a road so rougher than Bujumbura. To top that off, when you guys see the video of Marcel, I could pick. I'd love to be rich enough to make the video with Mr. Bean and Marcel together, because I guarantee there are two peas in a pod. I could picture Marcel driving through a restaurant or through a store to get to get down the road. I mean, he loves to drive those roads. It's a challenge to him. And that's the way I see Mr. Bean, with sneering at the police when he tells them he can't turn there. He can't turn there. Yeah, giving those faces, right? Yeah, Marcel's the same way. He did that the other day when the police wouldn't let him turn what he wanted to do. It's almost like he stuck his tongue out at the police. He's a character. I love to go watching his face and the way he drives. It's a rough ride. I mean, it hurts. I get everything but whiplash. But it is comical to watch Marcel get to work. And I'm going to put their videos on after this. And I just want to see how great it is at the center. I'm just saying I can't put close-ups on the kids. But you see from the distance, on every Friday, they're singing and dancing. I just put one day, the actual group, the Tory singers, the dancers of a Tory and singers were there. And it'll show you the little plaque and things like that too. But the thing about it is every Friday there's always music and the kids get to dance all day. And they got me to dance I can do a little salsa. because my wife is from my divorced wife that divorced me because she, you know, she didn't want any part of this. She doesn't like